Hi everyone, welcome back to Jazz and Blues Ukulele with me, Matt Stead. In today's video we're going to take a look at the piece Come On In My Kitchen by the brilliant Delta Blues guitarist Robert Johnson.
You better come on in my kitchen. There's hard to be blind and I do.
Delta blues was one of the earliest form of blues music, and it rose from the Delta north of New Orleans. It tends to have quite an earthy feel, and it was largely around in the 1930s. Much later on in the Great Migration, you had artists such as Big Joe Williams take the Delta blues sound up the Mississippi to urban centres such as Chicago. In Chicago, things became a little more pop and also often electrified, and out of that we have the emergence of the Chicago blues sound with artists such as Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf.
My mother said I'm gonna be the greatest man alive.
But before that, in the Delta blues, things were a little bit more rudimentary, and often the earliest recordings of this form of music just involved a single steel-strung acoustic guitar and voice, occasionally with harmonica as well.
Darling, good morning.
Alan Lomax, who famously went about America recording American folk music, recorded a lot of the early Delta blues. Of the Delta blues musicians, Robert Johnson has become by far the most famous, partly due to his legend. Allegedly he sold his soul at the crossroads, didn't he? Sold his soul to the devil to become an amazing guitarist. I think he just practiced really hard. He travelled about the Delta playing juke joints in the 1930s, and amazingly he actually only ever had 2 recorded sessions which produced 29 songs. And of these, Come On In My Kitchen is my favourite. I think it just really captures that raw but brilliant power of Robert Johnson's brilliant guitar playing. First of all, I'll teach you the basic structure of the piece, learning the chords and how it all fits together. Then we'll look at the A blues scale, and I'll show you how you can take this scale to add lovely little blues licks throughout the piece. I'll teach you a little introduction that you can use on any blues song in the key of A, and then finally I'll teach you a lovely little arrangement which makes use of the blues scale and replicates the melody of this fantastic piece. In essence, what we have here is an 8-bar blues song in the key of A major, and the start of the song is the same as pretty much any type of blues where we have the 1 chord played for 2 measures, the 4 chord coming in for 1 measure for a sense of change, and then a return to the 1 chord. And then rather than the 12-bar blues which extends out with another 4 chord, here we go straight to the turnarounds. We have a 5 chord E7 which resolves down to the 1 chord, a quick cheeky 4 chord which adds almost like a mini second turnaround, and again we have that resolution to the A chord. Before we do anything else, let's just play through those chords with a simple up and down swing strums. And what I want you to do is count along the measures. Just notice that when we go to the A7D7 measure towards the end, we have half a measure of each chord or 2 beats of each. You'll see what I mean. Come in on an A chord after 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, D7, 3, A, 4, 5, E7, 6, A, 7, and 8. You'll see their classic 8-bar blues structure. Strum along with me and let's try a few verses, really simple up and down strum just to get a feel of the piece. Come in after 1, 2, 3, the woman I love. 1, 2, 3. The woman I love took from my best friend. Some joker got lucky, stole her back again. You better come on in my kitchen. Baby, it's gonna be raining outdoors. Oh yeah, she's gone. She won't come back. out of her nation said, you better come on in my kitchen, 'cause it's gonna be raining outdoors. When a woman gets in trouble, everybody throws her down, looking for her girlfriend. Well, how can be found? You better come on in my kitchen, baby, it's gonna be raining outdoors. Fantastic, well done everyone. So what we're going to do next to make things more interesting is add some musical licks to this piece based in the A blues scale. A lick is like a little musical motif, just a few notes that you can add to either a finger picked or a strum part, something like this. Hear that? That would be a little lick, or it could be a long one. Almost all blues songs, when we think of the vocal melody, the licks and the solos, are based on a blues scale. Blues scales are based in turn on the natural minor scale, and that's really important because the natural minor scale has these flatted notes that aren't in a major scale, which add a touch of sadness and darkness to the sound. And that's really important to the blues because although the blues can be sung in a really joyous fashion, the earliest forms of the blues came from field hollers and chain gangs, and it rose from the southern states and out of slavery. So in essence, those flatted notes, the kind of dark sounding notes in those minor keys are really, really important. As with many forms of popular music, the blues scale takes two of the notes out of the natural minor scale that clash with some of the chords. It's basically an easy way to make sure that when a singer sings or a guitarist plays, that we don't get notes that clash or sound really discordant with some of the chords. And when we take two notes out of a minor scale, or a major scale for that matter, we end up with something called a pentatonic scale. That just means a 5-note scale. The A minor pentatonic scale is really cool for us ukulele players because it's our open A string, 3rd fret of the A string for C, 5th fret for D, 7th fret for E, 10th fret for G, and 12th fret back to A. Now you'll notice that that's your open A string and all the dots on your fretboard, which makes it really easy to remember. So again, that's A, C, D, E, G, and A again. And we have those flatted notes. In the A major scale, that C is played as a C sharp. Whereas in the natural minor scale and the blues scale, that C note, instead of being played as a C sharp, is flatted to a C. And that's what gives the blues that gritty sound. Likewise, in the key of A major, the 7th note would be a G sharp, but we have a G note instead. Again, that flatted note adds tension. And what the blues scale does is it takes that minor pentatonic scale and it adds yet another flatted note to create even more grittiness. And the note that we add is the flatted 5th of the scale. Again, don't worry about the theory too much. If it goes a little bit over your head, that's fine. But what we do is we add this E flat note in between the D and the E, like so. Here it comes. And when I play all of those notes now in order, you'll hear how bluesy it sounds. It should sound quite familiar to many of you. There we have our A blues scale, a minor pentatonic with the flatted 5th added. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take little snippets of this A blues scale to create little licks on our ukulele. Now there's only one problem, because that blues scale played on one string goes all the way up here to the 12th fret. It's kind of awkward to be playing a chord down here, right? And then suddenly have to jump all the way up the fretboard. So what I've done is I've taken those notes and I've placed them in open position down here on your ukulele fretboard to make them easier to find. And this is the first place the scale is written out on your worksheets. Just use your thumb to pick out these notes. We're going to start with the 2nd fret of the G string for A. Then we're going to go to the C string off 2, 3 for C, D, E flat. Now you notice if you're playing high G, we go from a high A to a low C. That can actually be really useful when we're creating riffs because we can get that high A note. If you're playing low G, you'll hear it in a more simple linear fashion where we go from a low A up to the C. But either is absolutely fine. So again, we have 2nd fret of the G string for A, a C note open, that's one of those lovely blues notes, D at the 2nd fret, E flat, that's your flatted 5th, open E on the next string, a G note, that's another bluesy note, and finally an open A on the A string. Now it's really important as you play through these scales, if you want to learn them, that you say the notes as you play them, because the temptation is just to play through that scale and think of it as a pattern. But if you say the notes as you play them, A, C, D, E flat, E, G and A, that will make them easier to remember. And you can do that in reverse. A, G, E, E flat, D, C, and that A. So what I want you to do is practice that up and down. Use the corresponding fingers to match the fret. So any notes on 1st fret, 1st finger, 2nd fret, 2nd finger, 3rd fret, 3rd finger, and you'll be able to smooth it out like so. Such a cool sounding scale, right? If you want, you could even experiment with little bends to make it really bluesy. Just for fun. So here's the cool thing about those blues scales. You can play the chords to any song in the key of A in this instance, and you can use the A blues scale to add these lovely little flourishes or licks in between. All you do is you use the corresponding blues scale for the key. So if you're playing in the key of C, you would use the C blues scale. If you're playing in the key of D, you would use the D blues scale. Notice that even though it derives from a natural minor scale, we just call it the blues scale rather than a minor or major blues scale, because this one form of blues scale is used over most music. Later on, musicians did develop blues scales using major keys and major scales, but this is the constant, if you like. If anybody says to you, play the C blues scale, they mean a natural C minor pentatonic with the flatted 5th added. All you need to worry about is it's the C blues scale. Just look up C blues scale in a book or on Google. You'll be absolutely fine. Another cool thing about the blues scale, as opposed to certain jazz scales, for instance, is that you play that blues scale over the whole of the song and any chord. So no matter what chord you're on, you can add some notes from the A blues scale to create lovely little flourishes or licks. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to experiment by playing the chords through from the piece and then adding where you feel it needs it or it wants it, a few notes from the blues scale. I'll give you an example. We could start by strumming an open A chord. You can either strum with your nails or your thumb here. And then I can just add a few notes almost at random from that scale. It would sound lovely like this. And then I'll strum a bit more. And instantly I have these magic little licks I've just invented, just like that. It's really clever. And don't feel you need to add a ton of these notes in. Sometimes just adding one little note will make all the difference. I tend to add more notes in when I'm on the A chord, partly because it's held for more measures, so I've got more time to do it. And also because I have the use of the open strings. There's only 2 strings that I'm covering on an A. So it gives me the opportunity to hit loads of notes. When I go to the D7, I might not go so crazy. I might just hit maybe this high D note. and then an open A as I come back to the A. So don't feel like you have to go too crazy. Likewise on an E7 chord, I often just like to add this C note here. It sounds really cool like this. So don't feel you have to add a ton of those notes, but have an experiment, play through those chords. And try adding some notes in. Have loads of fun with it. It's so much fun once you get into it. You'll notice if you listen to the original recording, Robert Johnson adds the D note to the A chord quite often. Technically that's turning the A major into an A sus4. That was a really common thing to do, and later on it led to the development of boogie woogie styles in blues music. It has that classic blues sound. Have a listen. And to do this, you just play your normal A major chord, and at any point, just drop down your ring finger on the 2nd fret of the C string. Off, on, off, on, off, fab. On the 2nd page of your sheet, you'll see that I've written out an example. So it's really key with this lesson. I want you to experiment and find your own arrangements and ways of adding these licks in. But to give you a little bit of inspiration, this is a really simple playthrough of the song where we use those added sus notes, those D notes, and then these little licks. Notice sometimes there are only 2 or 3 notes, just to bring things to life. So let's have a go at that then. On the first measure, what I'm going to do is I'm going to strum the A chords using the nails of my strumming hand. When I come to pick the notes from the lick, I'm going to dig in quite hard and use the nail of my thumb. I'll show you what I mean. See how that really makes that lick come to life. So to start off that measure, I'm going to strum simple down strums using my nails with a slight swing. Notice that beat 2, I've added that D note just like Robert Johnson does, like so. Okay, that's your first 3 beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and fantastic. Well, next up, all we do is we add our little finger to the 3rd fret of the A string. Dig in with your thumb as you strum this one. Take it away for the A note, and then add it to the 3rd fret of the E string for the G note. And then we go to another measure of A, again adding those little sus4 flourishes. Okay, so if I put that together, that will sound like this. 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Slowed down. Great. Next up we go to a D7. Notice this time we're adding our little finger on and off the 5th fret of the A string just to create a little flourish like so. Now at the end what we do is we strum one more D7 chord. Quickly pop that little finger, if you can, onto the 5th fret of your E string, and then take everything off and just hit an open G. If you've got a low G, you can hit that at the 3rd fret of the E string, and then the next measure we just resolve back to the A. Now I like the sound of that closed note, that 5th fret of the E string, but if you prefer you can replace that by hitting an open A. So that would sound like this. Okay, where I can just hit that open A and the open G, but I like it like this. Then back to that A. That might take a bit of practice, but have a little play around with that. It sounds so great when you get it. Next up, we've got a slide. Now, slides are really important in the blues. Ornamentation is where we add little twiddles to our playing, such as slides, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and bends. And those are really key, those bends and slides. They're really key to the blues sound. Now think about the fingers that you're going to use to make things really smooth. Try using your second finger on the second fret of the C string for this D note and pick it once and then slide it up. Keep your finger on the string as you slide up to the 4th fret. Now notice that leaves this index finger free, your first finger to hit the 3rd fret of the E string for this G, and then you can resolve that to this A up here with your 3rd finger. So we get this very smooth economy of movement. Slide from 2 to 4, 2nd finger, 1st finger and 3rd finger. And we go straight into another A chord to resolve that. Fantastic. What I'd like to do now then is just play that opening 5 measures of this section to give you an idea of how it sounds. If you're ready and you do feel you want to play along, have a go. But if not, I'll give you an idea of how it sounds with those lovely little embellishments. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go, fantastic. Another thing that works really well with blues music and is a really common thing to do on the 5 chord and often the 4 chord too is the use of triplets. This creates a real sense of drama at this point in the piece. When we think of triplets on ukulele, we tend to think of George Formby style drop thumb triplets or those Hawaiian triplets where we make use of our fingers and thumbs in an up and down motion to get those triplets going. Well, in the blues, we want a more driving motion, so we're going to simplify things. We're simply going to do lots of down strums very lightly with the nails of our strumming hand. 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. Now, because we've got to strum really quickly, you'll notice you won't have time to strum across all 4 strings. So just aim your strum into the middle couple of strings, the C and E strings. You might hit the G and A a little bit by accident, and that's absolutely fine as well. But don't try for a big long full strum. Keep it short and sweet like this. 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. I like to use multiple nails. That allows me to hit more strings. 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. Notice we're using a movable D7 shape for this E7. Literally, we've just taken this D7 chord. We've taken it up a fret for D sharp 7 and up one more for E7. So we hold down this shape at the 4th and 5th frets and we just literally strum down 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. Because it's quite a thick strum, don't feel you have to push really hard. 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. Yeah, fantastic. Then we just resolve that back to our A chord with that added sus note. And then we've got 2 triplets on a D7 chord. And then simply back to A again. So from that E7 measure, that will sound like this. 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. 3 under, 4 under. Yeah, brilliant. That whole section then with these lovely sus notes and little licks and the triplets will sound something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So there's a couple of ways you can use these additional sections, and with today's lesson it's really important that I want you to take these things further and mix and match them yourself. So you might do this whilst you're singing lyrics, or you might use it as a separate little instrumental section. I want you to experiment and come up with your own arrangements. So for instance, with the vocals, it could sound something like this. The woman I love took from my best friend. Some joker got lucky, stole her back again. So you could actually add those little licks in as you're singing. Or alternatively, you could have a vocal section. You better come on in my kitchen. Baby's gonna be raining outdoors. And then a little instrumental. So it's up to you. Think about these as lots of little sections that you can experiment further with and mix and match them to create your own arrangement. So the next section I've taken things further and I've really gone to town with, and it even included snippets of the original melody. So loads of things to experiment with here and have a whole heap of fun with. The first 5 measures though are exactly the same as what you were just doing. Lick, slide, lick. This time when we do a slide, it goes into the next section. We do have that 2 to 4 slide again, so try using your second finger as we move up. And then we've got 2 of these G notes just to match up what's happening in the melody, played very, very quickly as semiquavers. Okay, so slide up 2 to 4. First finger on 3, that's a G note on the E string, 2 quick picks. And then move it up to A, like so. Okay, slide, G's and A's. That resolves to the A chord at the start of your last sheet. This time we're going to do a slide along the E string from 3 to 5. That's a G note to an A note. This time I'm going to use my 3rd finger because then I can reach back to this C note using my 1st finger. And then back to the 5th fret of the E string with my 3rd finger. So that would sound like this. We resolve that, the phrase ends on the 4th fret of the C string for this E note here. Now the important thing here is because we're going to follow that immediately with these barred E7 chords here, what you want to do is when you hit that note, that E note, 4th fret of the C string, have your bar down for the E7 that follows. I'll show you what I mean. In slow motion from the slide 3 to 5. Here, as I hit that note, I have my bar down ready because then I can add a little triplet after immediately like so. So from the slide, that will sound like this. How cool is that? It's matching the melody. In my kitchen. This next bit looks and sounds way more difficult than it is. Just take things really below tempo and think about the fingers that you're going to use, and actually it's totally achievable. We're going to start by sliding up from this G note, 3rd fret of the E string, to this A note, 5th fret, and we're going to use our 3rd finger, and then we're immediately just going to pick the A string with our thumb. It's actually a repeated note because the 5th fret of the E string is an A and the open A string is an A. So we get this nice doubling up and slightly different timbre on each string. Isn't that cool? Then what we do is we just add our 1st finger for this C note here where we're harmonising 2 notes that are a 3rd apart, an A and a C. So we end up with this shape here like this. lift off that finger off the C and put it back down. Okay. So in slow motion, if I just do that first bit, 3 to 5, open A, add that finger on and off. Okay. One more time, I'll put that together. Okay. Fantastic. Then what we do, this next bit is one of my favourite bits. I love this. We're going to do a slide, but we're going to cover 2 strings with our index finger like so. How gritty does that sound? It doesn't even matter if you get a little bit of buzzing, it's absolutely fine because we want it to sound really gritty at this point. And you'll hear buzzing when Robert Johnson plays. So we're going to cover the C and E strings at the 2nd fret, like so. We're going to really dig in with our thumb as we strum down these middle 2 strings with our thumb. And as soon as we do that, we immediately slide up to 4, like so. Okay. And we get a double slide. How cool is that? Really gritty and nice. Then for the next bit, our finger's in the right place for the 4th fret of the C string for this E. We add either our 3rd or 2nd finger down to the 5th fret of the E string for this A, and we hit that twice. Then just resolve everything back to a normal open A chord. And then the next section, just with a little bit of swing, we're literally playing backwards through the A blues scale, the one that we practiced earlier, literally note by note going through backwards, combine them with chords like so. How cool is that? So just an A strum normally. Then we add the C note to it. Take it away for open A. Use that finger, little finger on the 3rd fret of the E string for G. Take it away for E and we're going to strum. Put your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the C string for this lovely E flat. Pull it back for D. Off gives you that lovely C sharp, and strum the whole thing again. Now it's hard to kind of get the flow of this one. Think of it with a little bit of swing like this. And I like to end with an A7 just for a little bit of bluesiness right at the end. So let me put the whole of this section together. I'm going to play below tempo so you can hear and see what's happening. If you feel ready, you can have a play along. If not, just really watch my fingers and have a listen out for the rhythms and the changes as we go. And I'll come in after 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now finally, in our musical pick and mix, I'm going to show you a really lovely little introduction that you can use at the start of the piece if you'd like to experiment further. For nearly all of this introduction, you're just going to strum down the bottom 2 strings nearest the floor, the E and the A strings, with your thumb. And what we're going to do is we're going to play notes that harmonise on the E and the A string. So you notice we start off with 1 finger on the 10th fret. I use my 1st finger. And that's the A string, and then my 3rd finger on the 12th fret of the E string. Now those notes are a 3rd apart. We have an E note on the E string and a G note on the A string. E, F, G, we call that a 3rd. They harmonise beautifully. And we've got that as a triplet, so 3 very quick down strums. Then we move back to the 8th and 7th frets. Notice here, instead of using my 1st and 3rd fingers, I use my 1st and 2nd fingers so that I can close them up nicely like this. Those are played as triplets, so 3 quick down strums. Then we move down to frets 8 and 7. And notice here, instead of using my 1st and 3rd fingers, I use my first and second so that I can close them up a bit more comfortably, like so. These are also stacked thirds, notes that are a third apart. You can always spot stacked thirds in music because you have one note that literally sits on the stave above another, like this. And the notes that we have here are C on the E string, and then an E on the A string. C, D, E, a third apart. So if we put those together, triplet, triplet, strum. Then we go down to the 5th fret of the E string. You can use your second finger again. And here we've got 2 A notes, one on the 5th fret of the E string and one as an open A. And the lovely thing is they have slightly different timbres, don't they? If you listen really carefully, this closed note tends to sound a little bit warmer than the open A string. So we get that nice mix of timbres, which is really pretty. Then just move the finger on the E string back to the 3rd fret, and here we have something interesting. We have a descending little melody on the E string, a G, G flat F, like so. And the really lovely thing is that we have this almost like a drone on the A string where that A just rings out the whole time. Isn't that lovely? So all triplets again, 3, 2, 1 on the E string, and allow that open A to ring out. And then finally the resolution to an A chord. And you can hit one more at the start for the next measure. And an E7 at the end, because that E7 acting as the 5 chord makes you want to go back to the start. Really, it makes you want to hit that first chord of the opening section. So if we put that all together, 3, 4. So again, I really want you to think of this as your very own musical blues pick-a-mix now, and think of all these different sections as little tools that you can use to create your own arrangement. So for example, what you could do is start with that intro that I just taught you. Then you could play some standard block chords, just your general 8-bar blues chords, and sing the lyrics over the top for perhaps 1 or 2 verses. Then you could have a go at that section where we added those little licks, and you could do that as a nice little instrumental. Then perhaps another couple of verses with the lyrics, and then you could do that really complex solo section that I taught you with more of the little melodic phrases in. And then finally, perhaps one final verse. So think of it as kind of tools that you can use to create your own arrangement. But of course, most of all, have a whole heap of fun with this one. This is one of my all-time favourite blues songs. And to my mind, this is like the essence of those Delta country blues, and kind of almost like a quintessential Robert Johnson piece. So have loads of fun with this, playing through the different sections, experimenting yourself and seeing what you can come up with. Well, have fun and take care, everyone, and I will see you in the next jazz and blues lesson very soon. Yukon!